Hey there, everybody. Travis Huckabee, your marine specialist with Navionics. Today, we're going to be talking about techniques for catching largemouth and spotted bass in the fall. This is one of my favorite times of the year, guys. Get out and the fishing's wide open. These fish are feeding up for the winter, and it's a good time. So let's get into this and talk a little bit about lure selection and location. We gotta select the right bait and put it and locate them, and hopefully we can get them to eat. So that's the two things we're going to talk about today, guys, is the lure selection and the location on how I find these fish and what I present to them to put them in the boat. All right, my first out of the gate in the morning, first thing I like to throw, low light condition, I love throwing topwater. I'm all about throwing the Reaction Innovations Vixen and also the Lobino Rico popper. So those two baits, guys, are my go-to baits this time of the year. I like those two because it's one of those things where you can throw that walking bait pretty fast and cover quite a bit of water. Or if you get a cool down, little brisk morning, you can throw that Rico with a slow cadence and kind of let the fish tell you what they're wanting that morning. So, if you got a weather change, little post-frontal conditioner, something comes in, the fish get a little finicky, don't want to move as much, that popper is the key. Now, you have low pressure system, those fish are feeding or they're on bait fish and they're reacting fast. I love to cover water real quick with the Vixen or the walking style topwater bait. And guys, one of the key things about topwater is having the right rod to put the fish in the boat. It's one of those things. I've lost a lot of fish in my time of bass fishing. I've been bass fishing for about 20 years, and it's one of those deals. I've been competing for about 10, 11 years. And along the way, it's kind of trial and error with a lot of that stuff, Whenever you're throwing these like Vixens or poppers, you gotta have a rod that's not a broomstick, You want a rod that will absorb the shock. Especially, I like to throw my topwater on braid. So having a good rod with a good parabolic bend in it is really a key to helping you put more fish in the boat. Because guys, if you're throwing a rod that's really stiff, you have to have your drag backed off. There's quite a few different variables there that you'll pull the hooks out of the fish. So with the way I throw it on braid, and I throw it on like my Vixen, I'll throw with the Phoenix rod 7/8 heavy M1 series. And it's kind of funny, guys, because I say 7/8 heavy. It sounds like a heavy rod, but in all actuality, it's not that heavy of a rod. It's got a fast tip to it and a good parabolic bend. So with that rod, when that fish comes up and it eats the Vixen, I won't swing for the fence or anything, guys. I'll just reel and sweep and let the rod do the work. Let the backbone of the rod absorb it and bite the fish. And it's the same thing, guys, with that popper. I throw the 7/2 M1 series in a heavy as well. But like I said, they got a fast tip and a good bend to them. So it's not like throwing a broomstick like the heavy, the heavy would kind of signal. So on something like that, with this, guys, I mentioned I do throw it on braid. So with that being said, you don't have to really worry about dropping the hammer on them because there's no line stretch with the braid. So all you gotta do, they eat that thing, reel down, a little sweep, and get that fish coming to the boat. The rod will do the work. The line, the braid, no stretch. Just put them right in the boat. It works really well. So with this, guys, like I was talking about braid, I throw the Phoenix Hydra 8-strand, and I throw the 65-pound braid on my Vixen or spook style walking baits, and on my Rico and popper style baits, I throw 40-pound. because it's one of those things, guys. You got, you know, just the heavier bait between the Vixen and the Rico, and also the lighter rod and the heavier rod. You know, the 7.8 is a little more of aggressive rod than the 7.2. So that stouter rod with the 65-pound braid and the lightweight, the more lighter, more finesse style, you know, rod with the 40-pound braid. All right, guys. So like I said, that's one of my key ways to start the day. I love to pick up a top water and cover some water. And now, when I'm doing that, guys, like I said, I'll start the morning out with it, but I will keep that going as long as the fish don't shut off. I'm watching for them on the graphs, just covering water, looking for them. But if the bite shuts off and they kind of simmer down, my next step I'm going to go to is the A-rig. This bait right here, guys, it's a spectacular bait in my book. I've caught a lot of big fish, 5 pounds plus on this bait. In March, I actually even caught a 992 in a big pro-am out here on this A-rig. And it's one of those things, guys, this A-rig flat out catches them, especially if you match your swim baits with the size and the color. Match the hatch of the bait fish that's in the specific waterway that you're fishing. Now, I like using the Yum Flash Mob Junior. And the best thing about this thing, guys, is it's durable and it's one of the least expensive A-rigs on the market. It's around $10, $12. They make A-rigs out there, guys, that are $20, $25, $30. It's pretty wild. But this one, for some reason, it's a little bit of a smaller profile. And these fish, I've took it all over California, Arizona, and these fish, everywhere I go, they like this one. It's a good performer. Now, on my A-rig, guys, you got to watch out. Depending on the states you're in, you're only allowed to use a certain number of exposed hooks. Out here, I'm throwing the bait you see on the screen here, the Flash Mob Junior. That's a 5-wire bait. Now, when I set that thing up, I have the top 2 wires, bottom 2 wires, and a center wire. My top 2 wires, I have coils on, where I actually we call them dummy baits. We'll spin the swim baits on the coils, and there's no hook on them. So now my center bait and my bottom 2 will have a jig head, which I use the Eco Pro Tungsten ball jig heads. And doing that, guys, I'm allowed, well, like I said, here in California, we're allowed 3 exposed hooks. So I got 2 up top with no hooks, 1 in the center with a hook, 2 bottom hooks. And that keeps that A-rig coming through the water and keeps it running on a true plane. It doesn't have it doing all sorts of motion, commotion. It just keeps it coming straight through the water column. So having the 2 on the bottom with the weight, 1 in the center, it kind of keeps it running at an even keel. So, like I said, guys, always check with your regulations, because there is some states you can use 5 hooks. I know even Arizona, you can only use 2 hooks. So it's a little different in each state. So be sure to check your regulations before you go out and start throwing one of these things around and have a game warden give you a bad day or something. So like I said, Flash Mob Junior, I like the Eco Pro Tungsten ball head jig heads. And the reason I'm a fan of those is they have a really good hook. They run an owner hook in them that's a heavier wire for a smaller hook. So with that being said, it's nice because a lot of the times when I'm matching the hatch, I use my Keitech Swimbaits, and Keitech makes a good array of colors and sizes. They have small ones that are 2.8 to 3.2, 3.8, 4.3 to even 6 inch. So they make a bunch of great colors and sizes, so you can really key in and match the hatch of the bait fish in your area. So with that being said, that Eco Pro Tungsten football head, it's a smaller profile, and it's awesome because that stouter hook, whenever you go down to like a 3.2 or a 2.8 swim bait, it keeps it compact with a stout hook. And that tungsten, it's a smaller diameter than the lead head would be. If you compared a 1/8 ounce jig head compared to an 1/8 ounce lead head, the tungsten 1/8 ounce will be a lot more compact. So it just keeps the bait looking more uniform, and I really like having the smaller compact heads with the heavier duty hook. So that's the way I rig mine up, guys, here in California. Three hooks, 2 dummy baits, the Eco Pro tungsten ball jig heads with a Keitech swim bait, and go out and cover some water. And now whenever you're throwing this, guys, throwing this thing all day will give you a workout, especially if you don't have the right rod for the job. I'm a big fan of the Phoenix rod 7'7" heavy feather series. Once again, don't be deterred by the heavy, guys. It's got a good backbone with a fast tip, and this rod right here has a nice, like I said, that fast tip. You can sling the A-rig a country mile, and it's not like you're putting a lot of force to it, because if you're forcing it all day, at the end of the day you're going to be fatigued. So having a good rod that you can zing that A-rig out there with, that just works with the combination, is a huge help. So when I'm throwing that, guys, I got my Phoenix 7'7" feather, and then for my reel, I'm using the Lew's BB1 wide spool. And why I'm using the wide spool, guys, is, you know, this A-rig, when it's fully loaded with the baits on it and the jig heads, it weighs a pretty good amount. So whenever you can make a cast, you can throw this thing a country mile, especially using like the Lew's BB1 wide spool, because the wide spool helps the line come off real smooth. So you don't have to really put a bunch of force into it. You can just have a nice smooth cast and it'll go. So you don't have to exert a bunch of effort in it. That wide spool just lets it come off the reel easy. So a good rod and reel for this it makes your day a whole bunch easier, especially for you guys that compete out there that are fishing 2 to 3 day tournaments. It's one of those deals. If you're going to throw this thing through practice and through tournament days, by the end of the event, you're going to be pretty tired. So having the right rod and reel just keeps you going all day long. As well, guys, I talked about the combo, and I talked about the bait and how I rig it in the setup. I like to throw fluorocarbon on this as well. Like I said, you can throw that thing a country mile. So I prefer to use the fluorocarbon. It sinks. I can get the A-rig down a little deeper with it. And what I like about it, guys, is it has less line stretch than monofilament. So if I make that long cast and I get 2 or 3 cranks into it and that fish hits it, I lean back, let the rod do the work, and keep it coming. Just keep that fish coming to the boat. And now with that fluoro, with a lot less stretch, having that much line out on a long cast, you definitely want it to be able to, you know, sink the hooks in the fish. So good hard sweep, keep it coming. The less line stretch, the better. So I'm going with fluoro. And also, guys, with this bait, with the A-rig, I'm going to be throwing it around structure as well, from tree, standing up timber, to rock piles, to even throwing it around docks. So the fluorocarbon is a lot more abrasion resistant than monofilament. So if you're throwing mono and you're, you know, bumping dock pilings or rubbing tree branches or coming over rock piles, you start, you know, wearing on that line, and you get that good one on, lean back into it, and snap, you got a heartbreak. So that fluorocarbon, it will really help you when you're fishing that A-rig around structure. Okay, guys, we've covered top water and the A-rig. So the next thing we're doing, we're going to talk about a little more reaction baits. These right here, my favorite thing to do. It's another one, like I said, I just love the fall, and it's cool because I'm going over 4 things here, guys, that I do. That, have you ever got that feeling whenever you stand on the deck of your boat and you got a few of your favorite rods out, you feel like you can just conquer the world. Well, this is what I'm going over. It's like when I have my LV 500 up there, I got my Vixen up there, and I got my A-Rig up there, I feel like I can put some, something special can happen. So these I get really excited talking about. It's a way to cover a lot of water and catch good fish fast. And again, guys, most of these things are real. The rod really plays a key role in landing these fish. So two of my favorite reaction baits is the rip bait and an LV 500. And we'll go over those two here after we talk about the combo that I throw it on. I throw it on the Phoenix rods X13 crankbait series rod. And guys, this is kind of the same thing. When they hit this thing, you want the rod to do the work. So these X13 and X14 series crankbait rods from Phoenix, they have an awesome parabolic bend to them. You can just lay back into them and let the rod do all the work, and they just absorb it. That fish can dig, do whatever it wants, and it's not like, you're not holding the broomstick. You let the rod do all the work and just keep that fish coming back to the boat, applying pressure on them, and let the rod absorb it. It's an awesome rod. So going with that, guys, I throw another Lew's speed spool reel, 7-to-1 ratio. Now on that, guys, I throw the 7-to-1 with my LV 500s and my rip baits, because the 7-to-1 is a good speed if you want to throw that LV 500 and burn it back to the boat. 7-to-1, you can keep it cranking pretty good momentum, and that bait's coming through the water column fast. Or you can throw that LV 500. Another approach I really like to do with it is called yo-yoing. I'll throw that LV 500 out, let it go all the way to the bottom, reel down, rip it off the bottom, reel the slack down, rip it off the bottom, reel the slack down, rip it off the bottom. I'm pretty much just ripping that bait off the bottom like a wounded bait fish. And guys, it's important to have a reel that has a pretty quick ratio, because you throw that bait out there, hits the bottom, you rip it up and set it back down. Sometimes, guys, you rip that thing back up and they'll either rip the rod out of your hand or it'll go slack. So whenever that thing goes slack, you got to pick up the line real quick and get the hooks in that fish. So a faster ratio reel is key to putting more fish in the boat with the LV 500, especially when you're yo-yoing the bait. And that yo-yoing technique, guys, through the fall into the early winter is a serious producer. Like I said, you can burn it in the fall when they're really on bait fish and just cover a ton of water and catch them. Or when they start slowing down at the end of fall, transitioning into winter, you can throw that thing out there and just kind of yo-yo it off the bottom like a dying bait fish, and they'll eat it. So those are my two techniques that I use. I'm either burning an LV or I'm yo-yoing it. Now another technique, guys, I'm throwing this already, the rip bait. I like the Lucky Craft Pointer 100. And once again, guys, matching the hatch, keying in on the right depth. The 100 I like it because I can throw it on 12-pound fluoro. And as I'm working that bait, guys, fluoro will let it go a little deeper. I want to run that thing about 4 to 6 feet deep. And if I'm running on mono is buoyant, tries to keep the nose of the bait up, keeps the bait, up a little higher in the water column. You can get an extra foot or so with that fluorocarbon on it. So with my rip baits, guys, I'm throwing 12-pound fluoro. And when it comes to my LV 500s, I'm throwing 16-pound fluoro. Because you're moving that thing along, you don't want much line stretch, and when a good one gets on that thing, lay back into them, let the rod do the work, and get in the boat. So that's two of my go-tos right there: the Lucky Craft Pointer 100 and the Lucky Craft LV 500. Those baits, and also, guys, the River to Sea Ruckus. It's a lipless crankbait that is pretty much the same style as like an LV 500, that lipless crankbait. It's an awesome bait, especially for the money. and it comes in some awesome colors as well, and it catches them. I mean, that bait catches them well also. So those are my go-tos when I'm out covering water, and especially, I mean, you can cover a lot of water fast with that rip bait and the LV500. And now also, guys, when you're throwing the rip bait, don't get stuck. Let the fish tell you what cadence they want. There's days when I'm out on the water where I can throw that thing out there and I'll go rip, rip, pause, rip, pause, and then they'll eat it right before I go to rip again. Okay, that tells me they're not wanting it as fast and they're eating it on the pause. Now there's other times, guys, where I'm throwing that thing and I'm going rip, rip, pause, rip, 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 pause. So I'm doing a two rip cadence with a short pause to a 3 fast rip to a short pause to a 2. So I'm going a 2 pause, 3 rip, pause, 2 rip, kind of going back and forth, and I'm covering water like that. And those fish, it's pretty awesome. Whenever you can hit, you're on that third cadence, you go rip, rip, and about to do the third one, and whenever you hit it, that rod loads up on him. He's got it. It's some exciting fishing, guys. So let the fish tell you what they want. If you go out there and you're throwing that thing pretty fast, ripping away with it, 2 and 3 cadences, or even 3 on 3s, just covering a lot of water and you're not getting bit, give it a shot. Slow down a little bit. Rip it once or twice, dead stick it. Rip it once, dead stick it. Rip it twice, dead stick it. I got into a situation last year in a tournament where I was on a hot rip bait bite. I mean, I was out there and I was just burning water with this thing, and it was like I couldn't rip it fast enough, and the fish would almost rip the rod out of my hand. It was awesome. Well, we had a front come through, and then that was in practice, and it was a low pressure system. Those fish were chewing, and it blew out. Day 1 of the tournament, it was cooler in the morning, blue skies, and those fish didn't want nothing to do with it. And it was like, wow, okay, got to slow it down a notch. So sure enough, I went out there, rip, pause, rip, rip, pause. And then it was about the time I was gonna rip the thing one more time after a good probably 20-second dead stick, my line started swimming off. And I laid back into him, and it was a good one. So that pretty much let me know, okay, the front we had go through, we got the clear skies and cooler morning, got this high pressure system, I'm gonna have to slow down a little bit. So that was a key. I slowed down, ended up taking 4th in the tournament. It was a good deal, being able to adjust. So that's a key to your rip bait fishing, guys, is if they're not eating it fast, slow it down a notch. And sometimes if they're not eating it slow, try to speed it up a notch. Let the fish tell you what they're wanting. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the next selection. Now, I was telling you a little bit about reaction baits, topwater baits. I'm kind of working the columns here, guys. You got your surface baits, your in between, and now we're going to drag the bottom a little bit. And I'm going to get into the locations as well after this. Now, 2 things that I like to do is I like to key in on the creek channels and bait fish in the fall. But the second pattern I got is I like to run main lake points that are at the mouth of creek channels and also offshore island tops. Those are two key patterns, guys, that those fish will set up out there and they will stay there during the fall and just kind of feed on the bait fish out in the main lake that's on the points and everything, that doesn't transition into the back of the creek channels like majority of the bait fish will transition and follow the creek channel to the back. Now, what I like to do, guys, is I'm keying in on the 20 to 35 foot range, and I like to drag the hula grub. This one here is by Gary Yamamoto. I use a 1/2 ounce football head, Phoenix rod, 7/8 heavy, M1 series. The loose reel, 7-to-1. I'm using another quick reel, guys, because you're out there, you got that hula grub dragging along. You want it constantly on the bottom. You want to feel the bottom. And next thing you know, you'll either get that nice thump or the line will go slack. So you need to get that quicker rod or the quicker reel ratio to pick up that line, set that hook, and get that fish coming to the boat. So again, guys, I throw that on fluorocarbon because I don't want the line stretch, and also majority of the time I'm dragging that around rock. So whenever you're doing that, that fluoro is a lot more abrasion resistance. So it's a key, and I'll even steel, guys, after probably 15-20 minutes of fishing, between like probably every 5 to 10 casts, I'll check the line right in front of the hula grub, make sure it's not getting any abrasion, any nicks in it. Kind of feels like sandpaper sometimes if you're dragging a lot of hard pack bottom or around a lot of rock. So if I start feeling anything in that line, snip it, retie it, because nothing's worse than having that thing out there. You're fishing that thing, you're pulling along, and all of a sudden you get that thump. You reel down, set the hook, and it just snaps. You don't want that. So dragging these baits on the bottom, you always want to retie. So always keep that in mind, guys. Always check your line, especially when you're fishing, dragging these jigs, you know, these hula grubs and jig style baits out there in the rocks and offshore structure. Always be cautious of your line. If it gets frayed, like I said, it's going to hurt when you snap that fish off. So take the extra time, retie. Okay, guys, so now we went through the 3 columns. We went from the surface to the reaction baits and the A-rigs covering water to slowing down and now having a bait to drag out in the deeper water. So we're going to get one last step into it, and the old faithful spinning rod finesse fishing. When these fish get in that transition in the fall where they're keying in on the bait, and they'll get in that transition, guys, where they'll either suspend, which the finesse bait is another awesome way to catch them, or they just slow down and just, you know, one of those deals, or they slow down, they get a little tight-lipped. And this is even a way, if you've got a spool fired up and you've caught them on the surface and then you throw the A-rig through and you catch a few, you've kind of got the spool broke up. You can always pick off another fish or two throwing a finesse rig. One of my go-tos is the Nico Rig. And on this, guys, same thing, rods, you know, the rod is key because a key player in the techniques you're throwing. So I'm throwing the Phoenix Rod 7-1H Feather Series, coupled to the Lew's Mach 2 spinning reel, and I throw my Nico Rig on the Sunline FC Sniper 7-pound fluorocarbon. Once again, guys, that fluorocarbon, it's tough stuff and abrasion resistance. So there's sometimes you can get out there and the fish will be suspended over the top of some underwater trees in a creek channel. And guys, it's one of those things. Sometimes you get those fish, you've had them working, now they kind of hunkered a little bit into that tree and you're throwing a Nico Rig through there, just letting it drop. And those fish will eat it on the drop. And you got to get them out of the tree branches or something like that. That fluorocarbon really shines whenever you're fishing around structure. I can't stress it enough. There's been a lot of situations where I never would have got that fish in the boat throwing monofilament, and that, you know, because of the abrasion and getting wrapped in the wood and stuff like that. Just that fluorocarbon says some tough stuff. So like I said, guys, the Nico Rig, this is an awesome bait. The bait you see here, it's the 5-inch Yamamoto Pro 5. And no matter where I go, I always keep these in the boat. It's the natural shad, especially in the fall, guys. You know, these fish are keying in on the shad and bait fish. So keeping it in the same match the hatch style, you know, in the same lane as matching your hat and matching the hatch, natural shad. Now, another big key, guys, I got turned on to this last year. It's the G7 products. You can see the orange handled pliers there. those things are awesome, guys. That's it's for the G7 sleeves. You can get the protect tubes. Now you can throw those on Cincos. You can throw those on any of the finesse worms you have, even to the 6-inch thicker Cincos. They make them in different sizes. I like throwing the 5mm protect tube on that Yamamoto Pro Cinco. And guys, it's one of those deals that using that protect tube keeps the life of the bait. It's one of those deals, using that protect tube, you can catch probably 5-10 fish on that one bait. And it's neat because you set the hook, bite that fish, and with that tube on it, it slides up the line and keeps your Cinco. So you're not going through a Cinco every fish. So I highly recommend the G7 product, that their plier and their protect tubes, because it's well worth the money you'll save in Cincos. You know, when you can catch 5 to 10 fish on one Cinco instead of one fish that, you know, slings one Cinco every fish, those things are darn near a quarter a piece, you know. So having those protect tubes and getting the life out of your Cincos is worth its weight in gold. And it's really cheap for those protect tubes and even the pliers. So I think it's a really good investment. And guys, for you that aren't familiar with the Nico Rig, how to set that Nico Rig up, guys. I use a owner mosquito hook, size 2. I will have my Yamamoto Cinco, and what you do for the Nico Rig is I use the Eco Pro Tungsten 3/32 nail weight. And if you're looking there on the picture, in the base of it would be the left-hand side of the Cinco. You can see it's a little light discolored there. It's because I've inserted that nail weight in the head of that Cinco. And now I've placed the protect tube and the hook about 1 inch up from about pretty much a little bit longer than the length of the nail weight. What that allows this thing to do, guys, is it sets the head of the bait on the bottom, and then when you shake it, it shakes the tail. And it looks exactly like a feeding bait fish, a feeding minnow on the bottom. So you can throw that thing out there, and a lot of times that thing flutters down and they'll eat it on the fall. But if it makes it to the bottom, guys, all you gotta do is shake it a little bit, drag it, kind of like a shaky head approach. You're gonna drag it a little bit, shake it some, dead stick it a little bit, shake it a few times, and it just gives a lot of tail action and keeps the nail weighted portion of the Cinco head down and the tail up. So it's nice when you're shaking it. Like I said, just looks like a little bait fish down at the bottom feeding along. And guys, the fish out here in California, this is one of my, like I said, one of my go-tos. You can catch them year-round on this, and it really shines in the fall as well whenever you're targeting the bait fish and throwing the natural colors around these school of them. Like I said, if you get the active ones going on top water reaction, pick up the spinning rod, throw it a few times before you leave the school. You can always pick up a fish or two more, because especially if they've been crushing them on top water and then reaction, you can go back through and catch a few more of those fish with this Finesse rig, because it'll look like that some of the minnows and the bait fish that were wounded will be on the bottom kind of dying. You bring that little Nico rig across there, shaking it, fluttering down there, it's definitely going to get you a few more bites out of that active school. So that's kind of my cleanup fishing approach. Get the active ones, and then you can even slow down a little bit and get the ones that weren't active, or some of the times, guys, some of the better fish will stay down at the bottom of the school and just kind of pick off the wounded bait fish that all the younger fish, smaller fish have already went through and exerted all their energy. Those big ones won't want to exert as much energy, and those wounded bait fish come down, they got an easy meal. So sometimes that finesse tactic there can get you a pretty darn good bite, and it'll get you quite a few bites. So it's one of those deals. It's kind of weeding through the fish, get the active ones and then come back through and slow down. You'll pick up a couple more fish on the Finesse rig. So, all right, guys, we went through the baits and the techniques, the combinations that we throw them on. Now we're going to talk about location. Now, with location, guys, it's one of those things that this time of the year, having good electronics is a huge key to success as far as going out and locating, especially these underwater structures. You know, we're talking about creek channels, humps, creek channel bends, stuff like that. Having good electronics and using good mapping products like Navionics will definitely put you ahead of the pack. Because as you can see here in the picture, we have a picture of a creek channel that comes into a cove. And now it says submerged island, shallow, and creek bed. Right by where it says creek bed, and it has the 3 markers. Those 3 markers, this is an actual area that I fished last week that we went into this and it was just loaded. It was awesome. These fish had moved in off the main lake into this cove and they were just following that creek channel. We caught them right at the mouth, right where it says submerged. And right there off that point, they were just stacked right there. We come through and it was one of those deals. We threw top water. We caught about 5 or 6 on top water. Threw out the Finesse rig, drug the Finesse rig across that point, caught a couple. And even one of my buddies, he caught one dragging the hula grub across the point that was about 5 pounds. We followed the creek channel to the back and you see the 3 markers there. Those fish, right at the word creek bed, the marker that's right off that point, those fish were stacked out there in about 21 feet of water. And guys, we were catching them left and right. It was awesome. We actually parked the boat up shallow on that point, and we were throwing the A-rig out deep off the point and let it go all the way to the bottom and slow rolling it uphill off that point. And we caught probably a dozen fish on that point that were all solid 2 to 3.5 pound small, spotted bass. And then we worked our way back into the creek. The next marker right there up to the it would be to the upper left of that point I was talking about. You can see there, guys, where the contour lines gets dark. They're real stacked close together. Now, knowing your topographical features is a real good thing to learn, because it really lets you know what's going on under the water, because you have to trust in your electronics, in your mapping to show you, because you know, we're on top, we're on the surface, we don't get to see what's underneath us, so we have to rely heavily on these electronics. So with those lines being so close and making kind of a gray blob there, what it is, when the lines are close on your topographical map, that means there's a steep structure. There's a lot of depth change there. Now, if you see them farther apart, that means it's more of a gradual depth change. And if you see like the first point that we were talking about, throwing the A-rigs off the point, you can see the point comes out there and there's a line, and then another line comes way out without any lines, any other topographical lines between them. It's just like all white right there with no contour lines. That means it's a flat. So the farther apart the lines are, the more tapering. The tighter together the lines are, the steeper the bank. And so that is a huge key, guys. And like I said, right up from that point, right up to the left, there was the creek channel bends right up there, and there was a nice little gut. And right where it kind of sweeps in, there was a nice ledge, and it dropped off from 12 feet to 18 feet. And we caught, I don't even know how many fish we caught off that ledge. We sat back off of it and was throwing the Finesse Nico rigs, and my partner was throwing a drop shot, and we caught them just like it was going out of style. They were sitting right on that ledge, right on that creek channel, and that was just stacked in there. And using my Humminbird electronics, I rolled in there, was using my side imaging, and I could see the bait balls that were just in the creek channel. So whenever you can locate a lot of bait like that, guys, you know the largemouth and spotted bass, they're not far away. So they're going to be keen on that as well. So that creek channel come in there, we caught them on the point, on the 2 points, we caught them on the ledge in the back, and even on the point in the very back where the 2 creek channels is. And now also, guys, when you have a creek channel that comes in and splits into 2 creek channels, that point or the split is always a good little ambush spot they'll use. It's kind of like a highway, you know, go right or go left. They'll sit right in the center of the median there and pick off the bait fish that are coming up that creek channel. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're either on the point or on the ledge, just waiting to ambush bait fish. So it's all about finding the sweet spot on the creek channel. And now, guys, whenever you have a creek channel coming in, and that one we have a split in, there's many lakes, especially in our area here in California. We have a lot of creek channels, a lot of nice little ravines, stuff like that. And whenever that creek channel comes in, I like the more creek channel splits, the better. It's stacking the odds in your favor. There's going to be more little spots in there that those fish are going to set up to ambush those baits, the bait. So it's one of those things. If I call like a chicken foot, a little three-fingered creek channel where a main creek channel comes in and breaks off into 3 creek channels, that's a magnum spot. I'm definitely going to go look at it. And if there's bait fish there, guys, it's going to be one of those deals that the fish should be you should be keying on them or in the area, sitting on a ledge, sitting on the point. But they're letting that creek, those fish, the bait fish migrating that creek channel, come in there and they're ambushing them. So multiple creek feeders in the back of a creek channel arm is always something to take a look at. Okay, the next thing we're going to go to, like I was talking about earlier, guys, the main lake humps. Like I like a lot of these humps and main lake points that are near main creek channels that are running into some coves and stuff. Here we got some points of some main lake island tops that we caught some good fish on. Now, these out here, guys, this is another reason that it's to really key on using your electronics, because without Navionics, you would be trying to find a needle in a haystack. You'd be out there idling around, zigzagging, trying to find the contour changes. But with Navionics, you can be running across the lake. You can pick here. I've got 2 waypoints here, or the markers. And now, those enclosed circles, guys, that's what a submerged island top looks like. So knowing that that is what the island tops are, it makes it real simple to run around the lake and find submerged island tops along the way without having to spend a lot of time zigzagging and trying to, like I said, poke a needle in a haystack. So the Navionics is a huge key to finding the underwater submerged island tops and structure. So on this one here, there's multiple island tops in that area, and this is the same lake that I fished last week. Going into there, I fished about 4 of those island tops, and the 2 I have marked, we caught good fish on. And it was cool. We got out there, that one island top was in about 28 feet of water, the other one was in about 23, and we pulled up on it and really couldn't see much going on as far as bait fish out there, but there was some pretty good arcs sitting on the bottom. So we pulled out the hula grub, fired it out there. My partner threw a jig out, and we dragged the top of those humps. And I ended up catching one about 7 pounds off the hump, the hump right here at the mouth that has a little point off of it. It just set up so perfect. It was a nice little hump. It come off to a point that had to come out towards the creek channel, and it dropped from 24 to 29. We were catching them on top of the hump, out off that point, and I caught that 7-pounder right on the drop of that point. We come off the top of the hump, dragging. I made a long cast with the hula grub, let it go to the bottom. I pulled it, and it didn't want to move, so I reeled down, set the hook, and it was a 7-pound largemouth. It was a good one sitting out there. So, like I said, guys, a lot of the time, like I would say, the go-to to catch more fish, like for numbers, is running creek channels and getting on the bait fish. You can get on those active schools that are feeding on bait fish and load the boat fast. And sometimes, guys, doing that is, it's a blast. But so if you're looking for a good bite, I still through the fall will pick apart the main lake, some of the main lake points that are running next to creek channels, and some of the island tops that are out there at the mouth of the creek channels. Some of those better fish just kind of stay back and lay low out there, and it's definitely one of those deals you can catch them out there dragging some of the less pressured stuff. You know, because a lot of guys this time of the year know, you know, running the creek channels in the fall, but not a lot of people do the offshore fishing stuff, you know, the structure offshore like island tops like that. So it's definitely a good way to put a good kicker in the boat, is kind of pinpointing that offshore island top. All right, guys. So what you've been seeing here is my Navionics mobile app. As far as my images here of the lakes that I was fishing and the contours and everything. Now, like I said, your electronics this time of the year is key, and staying on top of everything. You know, upgrading your version software in your electronics, upgrading or updating your Navionics mapping card is a huge key, guys, because we're accumulating so much information and updating them. The cards are constantly changing, so it is definitely worth updating the mapping cards, especially if you're an offshore structure fisherman that really would like to key on these island tops and stuff. It's definitely a way to go, and it's definitely worth doing the updates. Because now, last but not least here, some of the greatest technology, Navionics has done some leaps and bounds lately. They have some awesome features called sonar chart shading, and then we have Navionics relief shading. This Navionics relief shading is just something else in my book. It shows you 3D, as you can see here. It really helps you, especially for the fall, kind of see how a creek channel sets up, because it shows you kind of the layout in 3D of what the creek channel is doing. So it really helps you gauge of where the island top is, how the island top's laid out, where the creek channel bend is, if the creek channel bend has a ledge to it, or if it's got a flat or tapering. It just really helps the angler understand what they're looking at, and I think it's a great feature. This has been out for a couple months now, and like I said, guys, always use technology in your favor. It's one of those things that, like I said, we can't see underwater. So with the technology they got to give us these views to understand what's underneath us and what the fish are holding on, you know, the fish are relating to as far as structure goes, is a huge key to helping you put more fish in the boat. And guys, this feature here, the Navionics relief shading, it's on the Navionics mobile app for your smartphone or tablet. And as well, if you have a chart plotter that is compatible with the Navionics Hot Maps Platinum or Navionics Platinum Plus card, the Platinum Series cards are the only ones that will be able to use the relief shading, because it's the 3D feature. So keep that in mind. It's an awesome feature to have. It's definitely worth upgrading. If you have like a Navionics regions card, I would definitely make the update. If your fish finder is compatible with the Platinum, the Hot Maps Platinum card or the Platinum Plus series card, it's definitely worth the update, you know, getting that newer card. And also Navionics has a trade-in rebate. So you can go to navionics.com, click the trade-in icon, and it'll walk through the steps on how to do a trade-in. So they'll give you a trade-in value for your old card, and it'll get you set up to go, you know, to get your little bit of a rebate back for your old card since you're upgrading to the new card. So like I said, guys, navionics.com, click on the trade-in info, and it'll get you set up. But like I said, don't get caught in the past. This technology is amazing, so use it to your benefit, guys. So next thing we're going to go to, that pretty much wraps everything up. and I greatly appreciate you guys for listening in this evening. And I hope I was able to point out a few pointers to help you guys load some more fish in the boat. And if you guys have any questions, you can always feel free to send me an email at thuckabee@navionics.com. Anytime, if you have a question about tonight's webinar, if you have any Navionics questions, feel free. I enjoy talking fishing. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, or I'm also on Facebook under Travis Huckabee. So I greatly appreciate you guys' time again, and thank you for coming out. Have a good evening.